Hello and welcome to another episode of Life Stories, the podcast. Life Stories is a channel devoted to providing our audience with a deeper understanding of the individual behind the persona that we know. I'm your host, Michael Heap, and in the control room, I'm joined by my co-host and the creative mastermind, Nilesh Hathi. On our channel here, Nilesh and I are going to delve into the life story of Markham residents who are known in their field of work or by their passion. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube or listening to our podcast, we ask you to please subscribe so you don't miss a single episode.
Okay, Michael, I'm just going to punch myself up. There we go. So today on this episode, we are joined by Mr. Peter Boggs. Peter is very active, enjoys the aspect of winning in his sports that he plays, but he likes the journey as well. And I think you'll hear he's got a lot of good stories about the journey to when he started curling. He's also a data analyst. And Peter, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Great having you, Peter. Yeah. Now, you know Nilesh and I from curling. Mm-hmm. We've curled together. We've worked together in curling. Maybe you can give us a background on how you originally got involved in the sport of curling.
Well, I met Celeste, and she was a curler for about the last 12 years, and she curled in high school. She went to the Ontario Championships in high school. And she was saying, okay, you got to try curling. And it brought up really bad memories because my mom and dad were curlers. And we lived in Brantford for about 5 years, and they were curling. And every Saturday night, they'd go to the curling club. And my brother and I would have this little old English babysitter. And she would watch the Pig and Whistle and Lawrence Welk show. And this is when the NHL playoffs, or NHL is on. But no, we can't watch hockey. We have to watch Pig and Whistle and Lawrence Welk. So curling to me was always bad memories.
It became tainted because of that experience.
Yes. But then Celeste got me into curling, and it's been a wonderful, wonderful time.
And when you started curling yourself, I imagine you're a passionate person. You're an active, competitive person. Did you take lessons, or was there a way that you got yourself acclimatized to curling?
We're very fortunate now at UCC that we have a Learn to Curl program. Yeah. I started curling 6 years ago. There was no Learn to Curl. Okay. It is, you get on the ice and away you go. And so what I thought was, okay, before I completely make a fool of myself, I'll go ahead and I'll do a practice. So I booked the ice. I had the ice all to myself. And as you said, I'm a little bit competitive. I think I threw about 36 rocks, okay, trying to get my balance, trying to get the delivery, trying to figure it out. And then the next day when I got up, my entire arm on the inside was black and blue, mm-hmm, because you didn't realize that you're trying to balance on that foot, and instead I'm leaning on the broom with such force. Wow. I've bruised, my arm was the color of this shirt on the inside. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I got into curling. It was you get thrown in and away you go. Right. I was very lucky. I had Sally and Greg as my skip and vice. Mm-hmm.
Very experienced curlers.
Oh yeah, very good curlers. And they kept saying to me, for somebody as big as you, why do you throw them short? Like, why am I hogging everything? And so it took me a while to figure out that. But we did make it. We won that division, and we went to championship week. We didn't win, but mm-hmm, had a great time. And ever since that point, I've caught the bug on curling. And you meet great people like you guys and everyone else. You have a great social. It makes the winter go by so much more fun. Mm-hmm. We've got a phenomenal club, and it's just a lot of fun.
Now, Peter, tell us the importance of having a mentor. You said about Sally and Greg mentoring you in any aspect you do. How important is a mentor having to help you along in any sport you've tried or something?
They have to give you enough learning to give you guidance. But you've got to be able to do it on your own. You don't want somebody always having the training wheels on, right, who's constantly at you. And what I really liked about Greg and Sally, they'd give me one thing. Okay, instead of trying to focus on your balance and this and this and this, it's okay, just do this. Look at the delivery this moment and just focus on one piece at a time, get that down, and then move on to the next piece. And you just start the building block over and over again, mm-hmm, and you start to build up the pieces of being able to deliver the shot, sweep. Mm-hmm. But it's exactly the same as in a business career. Over the years, you build up your toolkit, I call it. And I've got a toolkit in my head that after 35 years, I can get thrown into almost any analytic situation and figure it out, because I've had good mentors along the way, and I've built up my skill set piece by piece.
Right, right. And I think you bring that skill set, your data skill set as well as your competitive skill set, to the front in many different activities or sports. What are some of the other things that you like to do other than curling?
Going way back in time, it was high school football, high school basketball. Then I got into triathlons for a while and did that for a couple of years, hurt myself. And then right now it is curling during the winter, and then bike riding in the summer and hiking. Right. I've absolutely fallen in love with hiking. Celeste and I were out in the Rockies last year. I've been out there for the last 3 years. My daughter's out there.
Right.
And hiking, there's no better place, I think, in the world, or more beautiful than the Canadian Rockies. When you're able to go hiking and just enjoy the outdoors and the scenery, there's nothing like it in the world.
Now, Peter, you and I have cycled together. And man, I can't believe how you climb those hills. What gets you to that point of being able to do, it seems effortlessly, for you to climb the hills when you're cycling?
First thing's the mindset. Hills, I always say, hills are your friend. Okay? Yeah, there might be a big hill, but it's getting to the top of the hill. It's using your gears, it's using everything to work your way through it. And hills just make you better. The better you can climb a hill, the better you can ride on any type of terrain. And it just builds a focus, and you learn your cadence, you learn how to work your gears properly. And on my bike, there's watts, and you know what level of watts you don't want to go after, over top. Right. Because if you go too hard, you're going to burn your legs out.
Sure. And
if you burn your legs out, then the rest of your ride's going to be miserable. So you've got to find that balance between hard enough to make the hill your friend,
right,
but then keep until you get more friends as you keep riding along.
So the watts are data input to what you're doing there. You're using your data analysis skills to be a better cyclist.
Oh yeah, that's revolutionized my bike riding. Right. Was the combination of the watts and the cadence together. You know, how do you keep your cadence in that 90 to 92 range? Yeah. And you keep, in my case, keep your watts below 240, because 240 is where you start to burn. On some of the big hills, yes, you're going to go well over 240, right, but you want to balance it so that you keep a lot in reserve.
Sure. Now, cycling is one of 3 parts of a triathlon, and many of us are familiar with the term Ironman Triathlon, and we may or may not know what that entails, but it's 4 kilometers of swimming, 180 kilometer ride, and at the end, you run a complete marathon, which is 42 kilometers. Now, I've done a couple of marathons in my day, and that was, I thought, an incredible accomplishment. But an Ironman has all of those 3 things together at the same time. And Peter, you have done an Ironman Triathlon.
I did Ironman Canada.
So maybe take us through that experience. It must have been incredible.
There are 2 parts to the Ironman. There is the actual day of the event, but there's everything that leads up to that day. And it's that planning from the beginning. It takes about a year. So the previous year I did a half iron, and then I got into a little bit of sibling rivalry with my brother, and more than a little bit. We've been very competitive all of our lives. And my buddy, he had done some triathlons, and so my buddy and I, we hired a coach, and I had a picture from the very beginning, which is me on the bike, and I forget the words around it, but at the end of it, it was enjoy the journey. Because every day you're building towards that date. And I had the date circled on the wall. I knew the date you have to be ready for.
Right.
And, you know, Thursday mornings, my run before going to work was 20 or 25K. On the weekend, we'd do a swim. We'd swim across Lake Wilcox and back. Then we'd ride usually about 125, 145K, then do the run around the lake of about 8K.
Right.
That was Saturday morning for fun.
Yeah. By the way, for the kids at home, don't try this, by the way. This is very exhausting for most of us. Sorry, continue, Peter.
The amazing part, though, is the actual day, and it's the people that make it. Right. Like, you've got similar people to yourself. We come from all walks of life. Like, we had the stories of people. We had a heart transplant patient. We had cancer patients, or cancer survivors. police officers. I mean, I did it, there were 2,400 of us.
Wow.
So imagine 2,400 people standing on the beach, and you're looking out over the water, and you all hit the water at the same time. And it is just an absolute blast. And anybody who has marginal interest, take a look at it.
Sure.
Because then you meet amazing people, and the energy level of the day, and even the post party and everything, it is a spectacular moment.
Now, Peter, you know, when I do live productions, it's like after you're all done, you like work so hard to get there, and then it's sort of a letdown, or what do I do next? What's that feeling after a triathlon? After you're done, what's that feeling the next day, 2 days, or a week?
Mine was a little different. A lot of people go into euphoria and then they also drop off. I had an injury. I injured myself coming off the bike. I re-injured a calf. And so I was racing my brother. I had him beat. But when I came off the bike, I pulled my calf. And I sat back and went, okay, I can quit at this point, or I can hobble on. So I should have marathoned in just under 4 hours. I did not. And I was able to hobble for about 16 miles until the pain became excruciating. And then I walked.
Okay.
And it is the most amazing 8-mile walk of my life with people cheering. I remember one guy, because you've got people all over the event.
Right.
I remember one person yelling at me, pain is temporary, an Ironman is forever.
Right.
Unfortunately, I did a lot of damage. I was fine, I had a great time in the event, all of this, but 6 weeks later I went out for a run and I injured my back from that. So I couldn't run again. But then you find other things to do.
Sure.
So then you take on the biking, you take on curling, other things.
Right.
But, you know, the post party on the Ironman, just to hear the stories of people.
Right, exactly. Now, and I can relate to some of that, having done a couple of marathons. I did New York and Chicago, and just, you're right, the people along the route. And when I did it in Chicago and New York, there was bands playing. There was just people, every neighborhood, they were out supporting you and cheering you on. It just felt like they were lifting you along the route. It's really the incredible power of human support.
Just anybody doing an Ironman has to be a little bit crazy,
Right.
but you also have to have an energy level. And that's the other thing is, you know, people help each other even in the race.
Right, yeah. So getting back to current times, I know during COVID, a lot of us were searching for things to do, and hiking became a thing that many of us did, and I believe you were one of those, and you discovered a few hikes fairly close to home, maybe in southern Ontario. Can you tell us about some of those?
You know, in Markham, we're really lucky. We've got, I'll go to cycling for a moment. We've got phenomenal cycling. You know, we're up at Angus Glen. We can ride from there all the way up to Lake Simcoe, back through Egypt, and play. You know, we've got great riding through the moraines. Hiking, you know, during COVID, yes, we discovered all the Rouge River and all that, but we're also Mono Mills up by Orangeville, beautiful. A little one called Sleepy Hollow, which is just west of the city.
Oh.
And then all the waterfalls along Hamilton. Like, Hamilton's the waterfall capital of the world.
And which a lot of people don't realize.
Nobody knows that. And we're not talking little dribs and drabs. We're talking really nice waterfalls cascading down. Like, again, we're very, very fortunate to be in Canada, to be in this area.
Sure.
You know, all the things we have in Canada.
Right. And you've also experienced that same hiking bug out west in the Rockies.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've got a few stories from out there.
The hikes are phenomenal, no question about it. I did learn a big lesson though. There was one I wanted to do, and it's a mountain. It's a little one called Mount Roberta. Nobody's ever heard of it.
Mount Roberta.
Mount Roberta.
Okay.
And even when I went to the ranger station and said I wanted to climb Mount Roberta, they'd never even heard of it. But it's this little obscure. It's not very high. It's 658 meters. So not bad. And I did it because that was the 40th anniversary of my mom passing away, and her name was Roberta. So I thought, okay. And so I thought, okay, I'll just do the hike by myself. I left the car down at the bottom of the road, put my name and number in case something happened. And I start the hike and I have my app. And as I'm going on the app, the trail becomes a non-trail. Okay. And unfortunately, I read the reviews later, which was, I should have read them before.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I got very, very lost, and my GPS wasn't working. I wandered for a long time. I think I wandered around for about an hour, maybe a little bit more.
Right.
But I had the presence to know, okay, if I stay at this elevation in the trees and I walk in this direction, I'll hit something eventually.
Okay.
And so yes, I did eventually hit something, and because it looks like animal trails.
Right.
So I did get back, and then I looked at the review. And one of the reviews posted by somebody was, somebody hooked up a camera to the back of a jackrabbit.
What?
There are no trails.
Oh my gosh.
But then again, I mean, you asked the question about work. Then what I did is I got a guide, and Stephen is phenomenal. Like we spent an hour just beforehand, before we even did the hike, going through how he prepared for the hike.
Right.
And the notes he made, the elevation, the maps, everything he had. And then even he made a comment, we're bushwhacking. Right. And I've got a great picture where I'm sitting on the very edge and he's taking a picture from behind me with the panorama of the mountains. And it's my favorite picture of all time.
Wow.
And, at that moment, I could think back about my mom and stories and things like that.
Sure.
And it was just, I could have given up the first time when I got lost. But it's one of those things you do it because it's part of family.
Right. And no regrets, obviously.
Oh, never. Anytime you get out hiking, there are no regrets.
Right.
Now, Peter, what's the highest peak you've done?
Not that high. Sarai was 1,600 meters. So that's what, I can't do the math in my head.
Yeah. A whole bunch of
It's
feet.
high.
But again, it was fun. There is a long slog where you're in a gully and you just kind of put your head down and you keep working your way up. But it's worth it when you get to the top.
Right.
Like the view from up there, overlooking the lakes, and there aren't that many people who were up there that day. And that's the other nice thing. If you go hiking early in the morning. Early in the morning, there are very few people who want to get up that time.
Right.
And you get mountains and things like that to yourself.
Sure.
Last year I did a hike with my son-in-law, and then it's an obscure one called Cinque Foy.
Okay.
And Abram has done over 70 summits. He's a scrambler.
Okay.
And
The scrambler is what?
it is when you have no ropes,
Okay.
but a scramble is when you're hands and feet. And
On
a level,
a steep incline.
yeah, and a level 1 basically you fall and you're just going to hurt yourself. Level 5, and he showed me a couple of pictures of level 5s he's done. You sneeze and you're dead. Like there is no turning back.
Okay.
So he took me on one, and it's a level 3. And it was funny, there were 5 false summits. And last year the fires were burning on the other side of the river. And so we kept an eye on those to make certain there was no problem. And we got up to the second false summit, and I look at the next one, and I simply turned to him and said, I'm not doing that. I've got a book in my backpack, I'll just sit here. And he said, no, I know a route, we can work around the side. And we worked our way around, got up to the top. And that's the other thing about hiking. We hiked that one, it took us about 5.5 hours, and we had 14K in total. And you end up having phenomenal conversations. Things you would never in a million years ever talk to your son-in-law about.
Right.
But you get into those conversations because you're outside, you're comfortable, and again, recommend hike the Rockies anytime you can.
Right.
Get off the beaten path.
And now, so now you've done the triathlon, you cycle a lot, you mountain climb. Have you rock climbed?
I used to a long time ago. I used to do indoor rock climbing, and I did a little bit of outdoor.
And so from all those experiences, what do you take away from that?
To me, nothing's impossible. Like it's the journey, it's the joy of doing things that normal people don't want to do.
Sure.
I mean, I've ridden 189 kilometers on my bike. I've done the fire walk, where you walk on coals that are 1,600 degrees.
Okay.
You just want to do things that are different, things that are going to push you. And what's the next thing? You asked about Ironman. Then the question is, when I finished Ironman, it was, that was great, I finished it. Now what's my next one?
Right.
Like, you're always looking for, where's that next challenge? In business, where can I take on a problem that nobody's figured out before?
Right, right.
Where can I, when Celeste and I go traveling, we go to obscure places. Like, even in Rome, we will find little nooks and crannies. In Colombia, it's the same thing. We'll walk 14, 15 kilometers and just find new little quirky things off the beaten path. And that's what makes life so much fun.
Sure. Well, and you mentioned your work. You work in the field of data analytics, and you mentioned that you're utilizing data to solve problems. And now, way back when you were just starting your career, I believe there was an interesting experience that you had with Canada's Wonderland, which is a theme park just north of Toronto. And I believe that was early in your career, if I'm not mistaken.
It was in university. And I was very fortunate. I went to University of Waterloo, and they were the first ones to have a co-op program. And my mom said, okay, focus, don't play football at university, focus, get into co-op. And I was fortunate enough, I got one of a handful of positions for co-op. And so I did urban planning, I taught high school, and then I got the market research job at Canada's Wonderland before the park even opened. And my interview, I still remember, there was another person being interviewed and myself with the director. And we walked around the park for 3 hours. And have you ever been on the Dragonfire, the looping coaster?
Right.
They had just finished sandbag testing it.
Okay.
And I think only 2 other people had ever been on it. And during the interview, somebody said, do you want to go on it? And so the director of marketing and myself said, yeah, we're in all day long. I think that's part of the reason I got the job. The other person interviewing wasn't going to touch the ride.
Sure.
And so
presumably no sandbags were hurt in the previous tests prior to you?
I don't think there were any. I don't think any sand was lost.
They didn't tell you that?
Yeah, they didn't tell us that part of it. But that's really where, you talk about where your career begins. That one moment is where I learned the power of data. Believe it or not, we were collecting postal codes we were interviewing people at the front gate. We were one of those people getting the postal code, getting some data. But with that postal code data, that was used to actually rebuild the entire marketing plan of Canada's Wonderland, because 3 years later, the attendance just wasn't there. And I went back and I took all of the postal code data, and we didn't have big computers or anything at that point, and I hand calculated the penetration of all the postal codes in Toronto and across Ontario, hand mapped it, identified where the problems were. The original consulting firm out of California that did the analysis overestimated the population by 2.5 million people. They thought that there were 10 million people within 300 kilometers, which there are, but that's if you can walk across Lake Ontario from Cleveland, you can get to Wonderland.
Right.
They completely overestimated it. They looked at something called the 400 and all the traffic going on the 400 and thought, oh, those people will go to Wonderland. Well, we have cottages. So there are basic intelligence that you add to the numbers, but that's where I caught the data-driven marketing bug. And from there, I built loyalty programs, built huge programs, CRM programs with agencies, and now I work very much with postal code data and building segmentation models, building clean rooms, bringing client data together to make wonderful insights.
Now, Peter, it'd be interesting to your perspective. There's a lot of talk about AI and the use of AI now, and everybody's like scared. Even the person who's from OpenAI CEO says we have to be worried. What's your perspective on that?
We also talk about AI and machine learning at our company because that's the buzzword that everybody's using right now. Yes, probably sometime in the future it'll get more and more traction, but you still have to have the brains behind it. You have to know the why. Anybody can do the what or the how, which is what the machine does. but you have to be able to ask the right question. Why are we really doing this? What do we want to get at? How are we piecing the right data together to put into the AI, to put into the machine learning? Without that knowledge that we bring, the machine is just regurgitating what we're asking it to do. Right. And in analytics, that's why you've got to have the mind, and you've got to have the business knowledge, you've got to take the time to delve into the questions to let the machine do what the machine does really well. I mean, what I did back in university at Wonderland, I could do that now in probably 10 minutes. That took me weeks and weeks of work to do. And imagine, I'm hand mapping all the penetration. And the other thing we found going back to Wonderland was transportation routes, everything. Right. You know, that now I could do in 10 minutes. But again, you have to know the why, what you want to get to.
Sure.
So the AI, yes, it's going to come, it's going to help, but it's only going to move us to where we need the answers.
Right. Well, I know you touched on your experience, co-op experience at University of Waterloo. You mentioned you were at the very beginning of that, and what's interesting is you and I both share the fact that we went to University of Waterloo. We were both in co-op programs.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And, well, I'm telling you now. And I was also a person who started in one discipline and ended in another. I started in accounting. I spent 3 work terms in an accounting firm. I said, I don't want to be an accountant. And then I switched to computer science, where I still am today. And again, that's the beauty of the co-op program, that you can do that without having to graduate, take a job, and then realize it's not where you want to be.
Oh, without it, I really thought I was going to be an urban planner.
Right.
And I did work terms up in Thunder Bay and Peace River, Alberta. And yes, it's interesting, but I drank a lot of coffee and didn't really do a lot of, nothing really came out of it.
Sure.
Whereas in data-driven marketing, you can see the results.
Yeah, exactly. Fascinating. Well, we've got a lot more commonality than we thought, Peter.
And curling.
And curling, of course. Anyway, now it's time for a section we call Rapid Fire.
Uh-oh.
Peter, it's my job here.
Oh, okay.
Rapid fire. Curling. Draw or hit?
Hit.
Country music or rock music?
Oh, it's got to be old classic rock.
Cake or pie?
Oh, pie. Rhubarb custard pie, to be specific.
Say a word in Spanish.
See?
Okay, that's very easy. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Oh, Star Trek Next Generation is by far the best.
Wow. Dogs or cats?
Oh, dog all day long. I've had 6. And I've had 4 cats, but dogs are better.
Have you ever worn socks with sandals?
No, never. That's no, faux pas.
What is your hidden talent?
Oh boy, hidden talent. It's not whistling and it's not singing. It's easy to tell you what it's not. Hidden talent. Cooking.
Cooking. Yeah, that's a good hidden talent. Coffee or tea?
Oh, coffee all day. Espresso, actually.
Espresso.
Double espresso.
What is your go-to karaoke song?
I don't sing.
But there must be a karaoke song. What does Celeste make you sing?
If it's a karaoke song, it would be, there are 2 of them. Life is a Highway by Tom Cochrane,
Yep.
or Hey, 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 It's Just an Ordinary Day.
There you go.
Great Big C.
Yeah, absolutely. Great band.
Well, those were very specific and very clear answers. So you've probably been the most direct in terms of our rapid fire contestants. So congratulations, Peter, and thank you. Thank you for being part of this episode of Life Stories Markham. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. This has been fun, and I know that we're both Waterloo grads.
There you go. Exactly. So if you have out there, if you have an idea for a guest with a great story, please contact us at ideas@lifestoriesmarkham.ca. If you would like to sponsor Life Stories Markham, please get in touch with us at info@lifestoriesmarkham.ca. Now, whether you're listening to the podcast or watching us on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. That way you won't miss an episode, and you can watch all the episodes there. And if you love what Peter was saying, you can listen to it again and again. This program is produced by Nilesh Hathi Media, and you can reach Nilesh at nileshhathi@gmail.com. Now, all this information, including links to be able to look at all the episodes, are available on our website, which is lifestoriesmarkham.ca. Thanks for joining us. Until next time.